UK GDP was revised upwards. The Bank of England has got its target to 2%. Grocery inflation is down. Is that enough to give the Tories a victory? That's not what the polls are saying. Voting has already begun in the UK. We're going to be getting results by tomorrow, Friday morning. It's July 4th, by the way. It's also a holiday in the United States. Speaking of the United States, asset managers around the world seem to be readjusting, recalibrating their portfolios ahead of what they expect is to be a Trump victory. Is that too early to call? Seeing 10-year Treasury yields moving, the US dollar strengthening, and some stocks in healthcare and energy moving upwards based on Trump's antithesis for, supporting certain things, antecedents rather. All right, let's speak with Efosa Aluyi, who is the head of investments at Sankore Global Investments. Efosa, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us, and it's good to see you again. So, kicking things off in the UK, you've seen where the polls are going. They've got all these projections about the big number of seats that Labour could win. It could be a landslide. Is there a chance for a Brexit surprise, or do you think, how do you think things are going to turn out?
Yeah, morning, Rotus. Thanks for having me. I think after a 14-year rule, 5 prime ministers, feels like UK citizens are kind of tired with the Tories and they want some kind of change, really. You talked about the polls. I mean, YouGov, for instance, is projecting that, Labour would gain about 219 seats. Yeah. They are also projecting that, the Conservatives will lose about 263 seats. Now, if Labour goes ahead to win with that kind of poll that YouGov has projected, it will be their largest majority ever, right? For the House of Commons, you need 326 seats of the 650 to really rule with an overall majority. And it looks like, the election is tilting towards that, where the Labour Party is, really poised to clear the ballot, if you will. And I think it all just stems from the fact that there are a couple of issues really that has bedeviled the UK economy, that has then obviously kept a lot of UK citizens disoriented and most certainly disenchanted with the government. If you look at issues from healthcare, immigration, the economy itself, education. I mean, these are issues that continue to plague the UK economy. And I think that at this point in time, the UK electorate would be voting by its feet, and it looks like we're going to have a Labour landslide. Yeah.
Okay. So speaking of which, that means I want to ask you what that means for policy implementation. If there's little to no opposition at all in Parliament. Now, Rishi Sunak posted this I don't know if you watch anime. He posted this on his Twitter page. I think it was yesterday, leading into the election. Warning voters against the supermajority. Here it is. So, I mean, they're getting creative over there. So as far as policies are concerned, do they have a point as to what do you think are the pros and cons of a supermajority?
So you need to look at the things that have really happened. Like I mentioned earlier, really. So for instance, if you look at healthcare, you look at the NHS, it's really on the brink, right? It's you've got about 7.6 million people on the wait lists, the NHS. That has grown threefold since the Conservatives came into office in 2010, right? If you look at the median wait times, that has increased from about 5.2 weeks in 2010 to about 13.9 weeks. Also, at the start of 2011, for instance, only 6% of patients had to wait about 4 hours to see a doctor. Today, that number is 45%, wow. Right? So the point is that a lot of underinvestment has gone into healthcare, for instance. Obviously, post-GFC, fiscal situation was tight. Although we've seen investment into the NHS grow yearly, but that growth has been very, very tepid, right? If you adjust for inflation, while Labour was in party, we saw a 6% yearly increase. However, while the Conservatives were in party, we saw a 2% yearly increase. So clearly, the capacity of the NHS NHS has been significantly bogged down with years of uninvestment. If you segue into other areas of the economy, for instance, migration, net migration has increased threefold since 2010. So that's a big issue. If you look at home ownership, for instance, I mean, that is something that has slipped away from the average UK citizen, where the average price of a home is now about 8.6 times earnings of the average UK citizen. Wow. That has gone up from about 6.8 times earnings. If you also look at the cost of living, I mean, inflation has improved quite significantly. It came off a significant half by 11.1%. We just saw numbers today seeing a 2% inflation figure. That has improved quite significantly. Nevertheless, if you look at output growth, for instance, right, GDP per capita has grown by about 4.6% between 2007 and 2023. Now, if you look at the previous 16 years, you've seen a much more significant growth of almost 18%. So the economy has been significantly bogged down, through the rulership and the leadership of the Tories. So clearly, people want a significant change. And in speaking about the supermajority, I mean, it has its pros and it has its cons, right? It doesn't take away the robust debates that we're going to see. But with the supermajority just simply means that, the Labour Party would basically have its way when it comes to policy. So obviously you're looking at policy when it comes to taxes. It's talked about the whole NHS situation and how he wants to resolve all of that, although there are no clear plans. It also talked about migration, the whole Rishi Sunak plan about deporting people to Rwanda. Of course, they're going to scrap that. So from a policy standpoint, it just simply means that, if Labour goes ahead to win a supermajority, they're just going to have a field day doing what they want to do.
You've already preempted my question. Maybe you've already answered it. You've gone through the economic metrics. Inflation coming down to targets. Grocery inflation at about 3-year low. GDP was revised upwards 0.7. That doesn't matter. That's no advantage for Tories with those economic metrics.
No, right. See, the truth of the matter is that there are, even bigger things that, people are certainly looking at. I mean, the inflation situation has improved quite significantly. In fact, at the last BOE meeting, the Bank of England is essentially saying that it needs to see, consistent reduction in inflation for it to start to come off, those rates that they have. And the ability of the BOE to start to cut rates would, prove very significant in really thawing that economic malaise that the UK finds itself. So the truth of the matter is that these are economic data points that are showing signs of improvement, but there are deeper issues, like I'd mentioned earlier, that, the average UK citizen is obviously contending with, and they're really fed up with the Tories.
Yeah, so thanks for laying everything out. So how big of a task, if we assume Labour takes over, is Keir Starmer going to face as far as the economy is concerned?
It's a huge task.
Yeah.
It's a huge task. I mean, as far as the economy is concerned, we're probably at a point where, the economy is probably, turning a corner, if you will, right? So with the right policies, really, all they need to do is just shepherd this, if you will, recovery over the next couple of years, and things should be fine. But, make no mistake about it, it's a huge task, particularly on the fiscal side, what they're going to do with taxes. It's different when you're on the campaign trail and when you're in office. You say all kinds of things and you get on that seat and you see that the reality is different. It becomes really tough, right? So it's not going to be easy. Make no mistakes for Keir Starmer and his party.
Great stuff. Just elections. Let's hop across the pond to the United States. I wanted to get your thoughts on the adjustment in asset prices, and I guess traders and asset managers, on the assumption or expectation of a Trump victory in November. What do you say?
I mean, it's just concerns around the outing that Joe Biden had at the last debate. It was a really poor outing, right? Yeah. And then people are beginning to, and even within the Democratic Party, there are calls that he needs to step aside. So if that happens, it's going to create a very significant problem. If that happens, then the scepter prospects of a Trump victory increases significantly. Important to note that this will be the first time since Lyndon Johnson in '68 that a president that is eligible for a second term is going to opt not to run. So, and again, there is the DNC convention, that's the Democratic National Convention, that's going to come up in Chicago. It is not clear for who's going to take over. That is, if Joe Biden does step aside, and if he doesn't step aside, then it creates a significant concern in people's mind. Now, I think he's probably just one more debate away to decide what to do. Now, if the second debate comes up and he performs well, that can be excused as an episode, right? But if the same thing repeats itself, then it becomes a significant problem that the party has to, grapple with. And that's the reason you're seeing people already making moves around the possibility that Trump becomes president, right? And if you look at that, the scepter of higher inflation, loose fiscal policy, which typically stokes inflation, becomes a problem. And what that would do is to keep interest rates high and keep interest rates higher. So and that's why you're seeing all of the rebalancing, maybe recalibrations that you're seeing. That's what you saw with the 10-year Treasury yield last week as well. All of it is still in a bit of a flux, but this is a huge point of uncertainty, really, for the U.S. election.
I've had you on the show several times to talk about renewable energy. We've talked about Tesla, electric cars, solar panels, What does a Trump victory mean for the renewable energy path for the U.S.? I
mean, Trump takes no prisoners about this, right? It's going to be a slowdown. Yeah. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Now, some gains, significant gains have been made during the Biden administration, right? It could take quite some work to really undo or unwind that, but you're going to see a slowdown, and you're going to see a lot of the energy companies really come on to be on the ascendancy, if Trump does win. So we make no mistakes about that, really. You're going to see a slowdown on that front.
Yeah. I'm veering off course here, but some big luxury market news. Right. Neiman Marcus being apparently acquired $2.5 billion by parent of Saks Fifth. Looks like there's a consolidation in that area. Is that any risks, monopolies or whatever? What's your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, so that luxury retail market is a $462 billion global market, right? And because of the nature of the market, where competition is really cutthroat, a lot of companies have actually, consolidated their way into relevance. So if you look at the likes of LVMH, Kering, with the sort of huge and diverse portfolios that they've got, all of that came about by consolidation. In 2022, we had over 200 M&As in the global fashion industry. So this is right up their alley. This is something that needs to happen and that they have to do to strengthen and to consolidate their position. It is a way through which these companies, number one, get into new markets, or also get into new target audiences, really. So consolidation is normal for that market. Important to point out that SBC, the parent company of Saks, is started out really as a for trading company, right? So it's diversifying and expanding into all these other things to really consolidate and protect its position in that market. That market is expected to grow at a CAGR of 6 to 8% between now and 2028.
Fantastic stuff. Efosa, I could talk markets with you all day long. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your insights. We'll see what happens with the elections and elections all through the year. Efosa Aluyi, Head of Investments at Sankore Global Investments. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks
really
for having me.